major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Friday, April 9th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. We are getting there, but we still have a ways to go. And tonight, the latest numbers show San Diego County has fully vaccinated nearly 25% of its population 16 and older for COVID-19. But as KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer shows us, there are some potential roadblocks in the way of increasing those numbers.
As of Friday morning, San Diego County had administered at least the first dose of COVID-19 vaccine to just over 40% of the eligible population, and the county is just shy of having 25% of residents fully immunized. But one of the big issues at the moment is the gap between supply and demand, according to Sharp Healthcare COO Brett McLean.
It looks like this week's going to be a little bit lower, unfortunately, for a couple reasons, but then actually will probably go up in the next few weeks. But we are receiving and administering anywhere from 25,000 to 40,000, probably at the high, on a weekly basis.
Sharp Healthcare has 5 public vaccination sites across the county, including the Superstation in Chula Vista. While they haven't had to close down many of their sites due to vaccine shortages, they also haven't been able to expand their capacity. But McLean is still optimistic that Sharp is well on their way to vaccinate upwards of 1 million San Diegans by the end of the pandemic.
We have today we will likely pass 400,000 total doses that we have administered, and that's about 160,000 fully vaccinated.
California's allocations of the Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna vaccines are expected to remain relatively steady through the next week, but a recent mix-up with a batch of Johnson & Johnson is causing a nearly 90% reduction of those vaccines in the state next week. The week after, California expects to receive an even smaller allotment of the single-dose shots.
It looks like there's going to be somewhat of a less allocation for the whole state, and then San Diego ends up getting a percentage of that.
McLean said the vaccine allocation should pick up beginning the week of April 22nd. In the meantime, COVID-19 vaccine eligibility will expand to anyone 16 years or older starting April 15th. In California, plans to end nearly all COVID-19 business limitations on June 15th, provided that vaccine supply is sufficient and hospitalization rates are low and stable. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
And a reminder, we have more information about how and where to get your shot at kpbs.org. Just go to our homepage and then click on the Vaccines tab. As school districts across San Diego County begin resuming in-person learning, other states are seeing surges in COVID-19 cases among student athletes. KPBS education reporter Joe Hong spoke to educators and experts about the relative risks of high-contact sports.
San Diego Unified School District is set to resume in-person instruction on Monday, but school sports have been in full swing for 2 months. Jorge Palacios is the athletic director at Mission Bay High School. He says his school has only had one positive COVID-19 case so far among student athletes.
We've definitely made some adjustments where we're not traveling as far, and we've been able to make it work. And, I think the community is just doing a good job of recognizing that, it's a difficult situation. Just rising to that challenge and doing what's necessary to get it so the kids can actually play and have some semblance of a sports year.
But as school sporting events in states like Michigan and Minnesota cause spikes in cases, one local expert urges caution. Rebecca Fielding Miller is an assistant professor of public health at UC San Diego.
And numbers are definitely coming down in San Diego County, which is fabulous. But we're also seeing more of these variants of concern, in particular B117, which we're seeing in Italy and Israel is really being associated with outbreaks in significantly younger people in a way that they did not see at early stages of the epidemic.
In the Poway Unified School District, students have been back on campus for weeks and athletes have been on the field for months. In March, there were a total of 65 positive cases among students and staff at the district. But among athletes specifically, there have been fewer than a dozen cases and no team outbreaks, says David Lemaster, the district's executive director of Learning Support Services. He credits the district's safety protocols.
And that includes informed consent by the parents. Students are wearing masks, physical distancing as much as possible. And then the most important caveat was that we're testing our students on a regular basis.
Lemaster says coaches are urging student athletes to continue social distancing and other safety measures when they're not at school. Joe Hong, KPBS News.
Changes at the San Diego Convention Center, currently housing hundreds of children seeking asylum in the United States. Teen girls were the first to arrive. Now dozens have been transferred to make room for some of the youngest and most vulnerable migrants. 300 children aged 5 to 12 and older siblings arrived in San Diego today. Our media partner KGTV was at San Diego International Airport as a charter flight arrived from Brownsville, Texas. County Supervisor Nathan Fletcher says the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services reached out for help.
They said we have some very young children, that the convention center in San Diego is the best location we have, and so can you help us accommodate some love and compassion for really young kids? And it seemed like the right thing to do, and we're happy to step up and help.
The convention center recently reached its capacity of 1,450. Last night, 300 teenage girls were transferred to another site in Fort Bliss in Texas, where they will continue with efforts of uniting them with verified family or sponsors. To care for the new arrivals, more staff will be added for supervision. Adjustments will also be made to the education, mental health, and nutritional services.
These are kids that have traveled thousands of miles, often by themselves. They came to America, they were put in deplorable conditions in CBP, and they come to the convention center. And it's something to see these kids overjoyed at a cot, a soccer ball to kick around, and someone who gives them compassion and empathy and love.
San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria issued a joint statement with Supervisors Nathan Fletcher and Nora Vargas, saying in part, quote, "Regardless of the ages of the children arriving, San Diego will give them the compassionate support they need as they await the day they're connected with the family members or guardians who will care for them here in the United States." And Health and Human Services says no children will be transported out of the San Diego site if they have COVID-19. As of last week, more than 70 had tested positive. The county's largest transportation agency today took a significant step in an ongoing effort to approve a multi-billion-dollar package to beef up transit. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman says language was added to ensure some workers of color are able to work on the project.
Only, excluding others. Thank you. No, actually, no, Mayor Jones. Thank you.
After a contested SANDAG meeting, the board voted to approve a guiding document saying, among other things, they will work with unions and the National Black Contractors Association leading up to the multi-billion-dollar regional plan.
Important that we have that voice at the table.
National City Mayor Alejandra Sotelo Solis proposed the changes, but some of her board colleagues, like La Mesa City Council member Jack Hsu, who first brought the resolution, said the updated version was not inclusive enough.
You may have an apprenticeship program, other open shop programs that need to be included. And that's why I wanted the inclusive language rather than specifying a particular organization.
The National Black Contractors Association says even though the resolution is just a guiding document, this is a great first step. But they said it remains to be seen if SANDAG is truly committed to equity. Final approval for the multi-billion-dollar transit overhaul is expected in the coming months. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Day 10 of the trial against Derek Chauvin, former Minneapolis police officer charged with killing George Floyd. Today, a critical witness took the stand. Daryl Forges has the latest from Minneapolis.
A pivotal moment in the trial against Derek Chauvin as week 2 of testimony wraps up.
You swear or affirm?
The prosecution looking to strengthen its argument that the former Minneapolis police officer used excessive force when he kept his knee on George Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes.
These are photographs of the left side of Mr. Floyd's face.
On day 10 of Chauvin's trial, 2 critical witnesses taking the stand.
There's no evidence to suggest he would have died that night.
except for the interactions with law enforcement.
A former assistant medical examiner testifying, along with medical examiner Dr. Andrew Baker, who performed an autopsy on Floyd and ruled his death a homicide.
Did you note anything resembling either a pill or pill fragments in the stomach contents?
I did not.
Floyd's death certificate mentions other contributing conditions, including heart disease and the presence of fentanyl and meth. But on Friday, former assistant medical examiner Dr. Lindsay Thomas testified Floyd died due to the lack of oxygen.
This is a death where both the heart and lungs stopped working. And the point is that it's due to law enforcement subdual restraint and compression.
In Minneapolis, Daryl Forges, KPBS News.
In the wake of the January 6th Capitol insurrection, the Pentagon ordered all service branches to conduct a stand down to discuss racial extremism. They were supposed to be finished by early April, and in the past couple of weeks, there's been a rush to complete them. Here's KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh.
The events that day,
First Lieutenant Madeline Hoffman remembers watching the January 6th events at the Capitol on TV.
Yeah, that was tough as a service member to see. But yeah, just personal opinions aside, I take that oath very seriously, and I, want to make sure that our Marines understand that that type of activity is directly in contrast to that oath. And
Hoffman leads a Marine Infantry Logistics Unit at 29 Palms. We initially talked just before she conducted the required stand down on extremism. She was required to review the oath Marines take to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
We were pushed this a week ago, all the source material specifically for the extremism stand down. So I've been taking the last week to really educate myself and be prepared to give this training.
Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin gave all branches of the military 60 days to conduct stand downs. Rather than having top commanders fill large lecture halls, the Marines pushed the task down to small unit commanders. It's Hoffman's first real training on the topic.
Specifically, extremism hasn't been a major training point prior to.
Experts who follow the military's checkered history with tracking extremism aren't surprised that leaders on the ground haven't been given the tools to look for it in the ranks. Heidi Byrick is co-founder of the Global Project Against Hate and Extremism.
They need to change the way investigations are done. They need to look at those regulations. They need to make sure that anybody who's in a position to report this stuff is doing so, that information is captured. Their own investigators haven't seemed clear in hearings earlier in 2020 on what the rules are. I mean, there is a lot that needs to be done to fix this problem in the military.
Byrick is concerned that if the stand down isn't backed up with tangible changes, it will send the wrong message to rank and file members of the military.
So, I think of the stand down as being a good wake-up call to everyone, and hopefully there'll be serious conversations in every branch and every level about these issues. But that can only be perceived as one tiny piece.
She says investigators in each branch need to work together. They still don't have a database of extremist tattoos and symbols. They are still working on a policy to monitor social media for extremist activity, often relying on the FBI. How did it go?
The training, I thought, actually went really well.
After the stand down, First Lieutenant Hoffman says they went longer than she expected, mostly because of the number of questions. One thing that came up a lot is that technically Marines are allowed to belong to extremist groups as long as they aren't active members.
Something as simple as sharing an article from an extremist organization on your Facebook page is grounds to move from passive to active membership.
2 Marines under Hoffman's command say the military's apolitical reputation has been under siege for a while. The stand-downs were a chance to right the ship, says Lance Corporal Alan Huff.
If you can receive this knowledge about this class and be told that it's a relevant issue and still somehow look away from it, then that's kind of a personal issue.
Marine Corporal David Dorsey says he found the stand-downs informative. He hasn't encountered people in extremist groups, but as an African-American, he's seen bigotry and racial stereotypes among his fellow Marines. He says there's no quick fix here.
Do we work on trying to fix it? Yes, but it's a slow going thing. It's not something that's going to change immediately. and you have to influence people to want to be better.
The Pentagon did not compile data on the extremist activity that may have been revealed during these closed-door sessions, preferring to let troops speak off the record. Next step, making sure troops feel comfortable saying something when they see it. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
Tomorrow, Burmese refugees and their allies will take to the streets of City Heights. KPBS reporter Max Nadler tells us they're protesting a brutal military crackdown on civilians in their homeland.
Thousands of Burmese refugees live in City Heights, having moved to San Diego following decades of political strife and civil war in Myanmar, which was formerly known as Burma. Since a February 1st military coup overthrew a democratically elected government, protesters have taken to the streets in cities across Myanmar. On Saturday in City Heights, the Burmese community, which includes a coalition of ethnic groups, will join in an international day of action, calling on the end to the killings of protesters and civilians in Myanmar. Over 600 civilians have been killed by the military since February 1st.
It's a space that people be together and then listening to each other, not from one ethnicity, but many different ethnicity who live here as our neighbors of City Heights.
Now Kabashima is the executive director of the Karen organization of San Diego, which advocates on behalf of Burmese refugees. She says speakers from several different ethnic minorities will talk about their experiences living under intermittent military rule, and to apply pressure on the international community to put an end to the escalating repression in Myanmar.
No to military coup, no to military regime, no to killing ethnic people in Myanmar. So this is not about this 2 months military coup. It's about more than 70 years struggle of ethnic minority groups in Burma, Myanmar, and then this military regime's ethnic cleansing campaign towards these minority groups for many, many decades now.
The rally is set for 11 a.m. tomorrow outside the City Heights Library on Fairmont Avenue. Max Nadler, KPBS News.
Britain's Prince Philip has died. The 99-year-old was the husband of Queen Elizabeth and father to Prince Charles, the current heir to the throne. Nadia Romero has a look back at his life.
The Duke of Edinburgh was born as the Prince of Greece and Denmark in 1921. His family fled to Paris when he was an infant after they were overthrown from power. 8 years later, Philip was sent to England to be raised by his grandmother and uncle. He served in the British Royal Navy from 1939 to 1953 and fought in World War II. The Queen and Prince Philip met before the Second World War when he was a young naval cadet. The couple married in 1947.
I was always struck by how much he was committed to supporting the Queen on every occasion, whether it was a happy one or a more difficult task with members of the family or sad occasion. But he was always there.
During his time with the Royal Air Force, he logged almost 6,000 flight hours in 59 different types of aircraft over 4 decades. Famous for his energy, the Duke's health inevitably deteriorated as he headed into old age. In the summer of 2017, Prince Philip effectively announced his retirement, saying he would give up official royal duties. Prince Philip was the oldest serving royal consort. He was known for his love of painting, horses, flying, sailing, and environmental conservation. Prince Philip, serviceman, campaigner, great-grandfather, and a beloved husband. I'm Nadia Romero reporting.
Longtime San Diegans may remember Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip visited San Diego back in 1983. The royal couple traveled here aboard the HMY Britannia and toured Scripps Institution of Oceanography and the Old Globe and the zoo. Prince Philip would have turned 100 years old on June 10th. San Diego city leaders hope a plan to redevelop the Midway District with a new sports arena aren't put on hold. SDSU's Mira Kopik weighs in on the potential delay with the Friday Business Report.
The California State Legislature amended the Surplus Land Act to really try to improve the housing stock in the state of California, especially related to affordable housing. So what's happened is that the guidelines might impact how the city ran this process in ultimately selecting Brookfield as the developer. So under these new guidelines, the deal with Brookfield has to be put on hold until it's determined whether the city needs to redo the process and solicit bid from affordable housing developers first. So the city is looking at its options and whether it'll be forced to rebid or they can make an accommodation. That's the real trick here. And from a business and marketing standpoint, it's another black eye for the city because with the issues with the convention center and all these efforts with the city of San Diego trying to redevelop major parts of its economy to ensure that we can improve our standing from a world-class city perspective is going to be under scrutiny.
The San Diego housing market gets some much-needed relief as transit and housing officials break ground on a new residential development at the Grantville trolley station. Construction of Union Grantville adds 250 new housing units in an affordable housing community. Every resident will receive a free MTS trolley pass in order to reduce cars and parking on site. The site is also only a 4-minute trolley ride away from the SDSU and SDSU Campus West.
This project is a great example of the solutions we need to address both the housing and climate crisis. Transportation represents about 50% of the region's greenhouse gas emissions.
Now, Martinez says this project sets the tone for the types of partnerships and growth the region needs to transform its transportation system.
Tonight on the NewsHour, the United Kingdom mourns as Prince Philip, husband of Queen Elizabeth II, passes away at the age of 99. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Disneyland now says it will open its new Avengers Campus attraction on June 4th. The park is scheduled to reopen on April 30th to limited capacity. The Avengers Campus is located in the California Adventure Park and features Marvel superheroes. Also among the features, the new Spider-Man attraction takes visitors on what officials call an interactive escapade that includes a training session with Black Panther.
Happy Friday. We're dealing with some pretty nice weather across the Southwest. We do have the cooler air near the coast, and that's thanks to some onshore flow, but the further inland you get, the warmer it gets. Extreme heat continues for the desert with temperatures well above average for this time of year. Next week, and that our next system begins to move onshore, we'll see some clouds returning into the forecast and some slightly cooler temperatures as well. Tonight near the coast, we're talking low to mid 50s, 51 in Oceanside, 57 tonight in San Diego, a little bit cooler once you get further inland. Then in the mountains, it remains mild, 50s and 60s in the forecast for that overnight period. We rinse and repeat for Saturday, cooler with that onshore flow near the coast and pleasant and even hot the further inland that you get. Temperatures remaining well above average on Saturday as well. Oceanside 70 degrees on your Saturday, 78 in Escondido, and the further inland you get, the hotter it gets. Borrego Springs, mid-90s in the forecast for your Saturday afternoon. Sunday, we'll start to see this cold front trying to drape southward, but it still remains very warm in the southwest with temperatures around 5 to 10 degrees above average for this time of year. So near the coast, we're talking upper 60s to low 70s for your weekend, but as those clouds really begin to move on in, temperatures drop off into the low to mid 60s. Further inland, you do see a change as well, but not quite as dramatic. Upper 70s to low 80s this weekend, then a drop off into the 70s Monday, and then mid to upper 60s for Tuesday and Wednesday. In the mountains, bright sunshine. You'll see the winds picking up as we start off the new work week, and temperatures falling off into the 50s for Monday, Tuesday, and heading into your Wednesday as well. And then in the desert, it just remains hot and dry, upper 80s and low 90s, and then a drop into the low 80s on Wednesday. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Jessica Pash.
Live performances took a big hit during the pandemic, but now one theater group is making a comeback in the great outdoors. KPBS North County reporter Tanya Thorne takes us to Carlsbad's flower fields for a sneak peek.
It's been over a year since New Village Arts performers have been able to get on stage for a live event. Now they are bringing the stage to the Carlsbad Flower Fields for an alfresco theatrical experience. Christiane Kerner, the executive artistic director, says NVA will be putting on performances from now until October.
We're going to get to feature these brilliant San Diego-based artists right here in the flower fields, in front of an audience, live but safe.
The flower fields close at 6 p.m. and NVA performances begin at 6:30 p.m., giving patrons the opportunity to enjoy the sunset at the flower fields while also enjoying live entertainment. When the flowers are done blooming in May, NVA plans to expand to larger musicals and performances. Zachary Wolf is one of the performers.
Well, it does feel a little weird to be somewhat back, but I feel safe, and I'm sure the audience will feel safe, and we're just gonna have a blast. It just feels super surreal and super lucky.
Wolf said this opportunity is also helping all the behind-the-scenes crew return to their craft. Tickets are now available for the first weekend of performances on the New Village Arts website, and ticket prices do include admission into the flower fields. A full schedule will be announced later this month. Singer Jasmine January says the return of live performances are just what the community needs as things begin to normalize.
It's going to be exciting, it's going to be emotional, but fun, and I think we all kind of need that relief of just like breath and happiness and smiles and laughs. You gotta come, you gotta come.
In Carlsbad, Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.